Examples of good hybrid genre films.
Steel Magnolias. Laughter through tears is my favorite emotion.
Comedy tragedy.
Big Lebowski.
So crime comedy.
Oh, Scream.
Scream. Comedy horror. Kia ora, hello, and welcome to this episode of Play Notes Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Duncan.
And I'm also your host, Alison Horsley.
And we're both dramaturgs, meaning we read a lot of plays.
We've likely read the plays you feel you should have, but didn't.
And that's where Play Notes comes in. And this is the final of our 3 Shakespeares.
Yay!
For now. Our 3 problematic Shakespeares.
Yes, they are.
And part of the problem, as we see it, is the genre.
Yes, genre. This is a hybrid.
Although we're not sure it was intended like that.
Yeah, no, I think originally it was like a comedy.
Comedy. What is this comedy? The Merchant of Venice.
Yes,
it's
hilarious.
Right through.
Yeah, unfortunately, not so boldly comic nowadays. And I'm just gonna get it right out there, like right now. I'm Jewish, so I got a perspective on this a little bit.
You have thoughts.
I have thoughts
and feelings
Have not eyes. That's one reason why you should read the play.
Yeah.
Anyway,
to get that reference.
Yeah. Because we're not gonna tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay. So genre.
Yeah, genre. Now, genre is important. You know, for whatever you create, whether it's a play or a film.
Mm-hmm. You gotta know what you're doing.
Yeah, and it sets up audience expectations.
Yeah, so what are some of the expectations, for example, of a comedy?
Well, I want to laugh.
Yeah.
I want some, usually there'd be some characters making a fool of themselves.
Yeah. I mean, historically, they were like low-born characters, blah, blah, blah. But
and Shakespeare's comedies tended to end in a marriage of sorts, where there was an actual marriage. Or
fertility. Of some sort. Like a hope, fertility, etc., etc.
They're the good time ones.
Yeah.
Though with tragedy...
tragedy we've talked about, but I guess, Shakespearean tragedy, Emily Duncan, what do we normally end with?
Lots of dead people. That stage...
Bodies.
There's very little set,
everywhere.
As we said, but there's bodies everywhere.
There's bodies everywhere.
So they will have to get up to their feet to do the curtain call.
Yeah. Oh, so awkward.
Yeah.
That would be embarrassing. But high body count, right?
Now, so we talked about how, Shakespeare, he intended for this to be a comedy.
Yeah.
And that would be the audience expectation. And this is where there's a difference between how we might read it now in the 21st century versus back in the 16th century.
Yeah. And maybe we should get just right out there. A lot of people know the character of Shylock or whatever, but maybe we should mention what we're talking about so much is that in The Merchant of Venice, there's a moneylender named Shylock who's Jewish, and that's like his Jewishness and his greed are like defining characteristics of him, and he's totally the bad guy of the play, and he is outsmarted by the end of the play, by the Christians basically, and forced to convert to Christianity and forfeit all of
because
his
he can
riches.
only be a redeemable character.
He's redeemed at the end by converting to Christianity. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about in terms of it being problematic. Or at least that to me that's the problematic part of the play.
It's hugely problematic. And we talked, earlier today about if he wasn't Jewish.
Yeah.
He's so vengeful.
Yes, he's taken vindictive to a whole new level.
Yes.
In the play. And
it's presented as intrinsic of his character.
Yeah. And so he fulfills a lot of really negative stereotypes. So pretty much every negative stereotype of Jews historically that would have been gets kind of put onto Shylock in the course of the play. So that's one of the problematic things.
No, but Shakespeare creates he tries to create a bit of distance. But again, this is another play set in
Venice
in Italy.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
so the whole Jewish thing is kind of interesting because there would have been there was a Jewish ghetto in Venice, whereas in England at the time, Judaism was not allowed. So Jews were not allowed to live in England unless they had been given special permission, and they had converted to Christianity. And so when Shakespeare wrote the play, which they think he wrote it between 1596, 1598, so it's after Romeo and Juliet, but before Othello, in terms of, if you're only listening to the podcast, and those are the only Shakespeare plays you've heard of, that's where we sit, is between the other two. And, but at the time, there would have been some awareness of Jews being controversial because Elizabeth I's personal physician in 1594, Rodrigo Lopes, who was a Portuguese converso, who was a Portuguese Jew, basically, who had converted, or from a family that had converted to Christianity, he was hanged, drawn, and quartered for supposedly conspiring to poison Queen Elizabeth. So there was definitely a so hot right now vibe about Jews being horrible and being publicly punished, basically, at the time. So again, Shakespeare's writing for his time, right? And for
Writing
his audience.
for his audience.
Yeah. And Marlowe's
Jew of Malta?
The Jew of Malta was popular. It's even referenced in The Merchant of Venice. The character that was in The Jew of Malta is referenced in Merchant of Venice. So yeah, so it was timely for sure, but definitely there wouldn't have been a big population of Jews that Shakespeare was hanging out with. So right. Yeah, so interestingly, England is a particularly non-Jewy kind of place, and so the play is set in Venice, where it's a little bit more so.
We were going to touch a bit on Shakespeare's life.
Yeah.
Because he was successful in his time as well.
Very successful.
And he knew his audience.
Yeah.
He knew what would work commercially.
Yeah. So he was born and raised in Stratford upon Avon. And he went to the school that was there.
He was educated.
He was educated, would have had a pretty traditional classic education, like Latin, stuff like that. So we're not going to get into the whole authorship thing here. Emily, I think
it's a whole other.
Safe to say we both think that Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare's plays.
Yeah.
But yeah, so grew up in Stratford. He got married. Had a few kids.
But he went to work in London.
Yeah, went to work in London. Became a sharer in the Lord Chamberlain's Men.
And this is really the start of acting as a profession as we might know it today.
Yeah, because he was so Lord Chamberlain's Men had 8 sharers, as they were called, and then usually about 8 additional hired actors or other people working at the theater. So Shakespeare would have been an actor. He was also basically producer. He would have been dealing with box office shit, as the other guys were, dealing with the venue.
He was writing for people he knew.
It said that he was given time off from acting to be able to write, because they needed that money, because he wrote popular plays.
And he did well enough to buy property back in Stratford.
Yeah, so he retired back in Stratford, where he died at a relatively young age, actually. And that's kind of a crazy story. Emily, you and I haven't talked about this at all.
Okay, go for it.
Oh, no, that's okay. But it's just an interesting story to learn about, like, how he died. Because supposedly he had been out boozing.
In Stratford.
And then died soon after, but then supposedly not. So it's been ventured that maybe it was a venereal disease. Oh. It's also been ventured that it was cholera or typhoid, all these different things.
Okay.
Now I'm just, like, making stuff up.
Oh.
It was...
He did.
It was the spider.
The spider.
The spider comes back.
If you miss the spider, you need to go back to the episode about Romeo and Juliet.
Was it that or Othello?
I think it was Romeo and Juliet.
Okay.
But you should go back and listen to all of them.
Because, absolutely. It was an integral part of our dramaturgical analysis of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Shakespeare, so he died in Stratford, and...
He did okay for himself.
He did great for himself.
Yeah, so don't sit up at night worrying about, how things were for him in his lifetime.
Yeah, he had a nice big house. So he was fine.
And like the other plays we've talked about, the story itself
of Merchant of Venice.
It wasn't his original idea.
No, it would have come, it would have come from somewhere else. So this one would have come from another Italian story, Il Pecorone, which they think is probably the source for the play.
And similar to the Greek tragedies we discussed, audiences often went to these plays to see the how, not the what.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
the story is performed or unfolds.
Yeah, so whether, in the audience, we're probably not talking about an audience of highly, highly literate people. Certainly some people were literate, but it's not like a lot of the audience would have read the story. But considering in this play, what happens with Shylock, I think people could probably see it coming a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a character on stage who is this evil who, doesn't get his comeuppance at the end of the play.
Okay.
Like even Richard III, right? He gets his. So, doesn't he?
Yeah. Okay, I was just thinking, and my mind was thinking while you were talking.
That's okay, I love it.
Yeah, okay. Sometimes.
Mine wasn't.
Okay. I was thinking, before we jump into talking about the other characters and the flesh plot versus the casket plot,
Yeah.
we should talk a bit about usury or money lending.
Yeah.
And that was a real sort of, I see it as a catch-22 profession for a Jewish man.
Yeah. So historically, Jews were not allowed to do other professions. So they were excluded from doing a lot of professions, and the Talmud doesn't prevent Jews from lending money to non-Jews and charging interest. And the British government at the time highly taxed Jews, especially Jews who were money lenders, which is, well, I mean, this is talking Europe in general, but the Jews who were living in England were highly taxed, and so there's a belief that that probably interest rates from Jewish money lenders would have been higher because they're being taxed at a higher rate. So you're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
And Christians weren't allowed to work as money lenders.
Correct. So they had to come to the Jews.
But they still wanted to borrow money for their businesses.
Right. And so then the Jews got a bad reputation for being money lenders, which they totally were.
Hypocrisy and
yeah. So just messy.
Okay, so we should talk about the flesh plot, because they will introduce some of the other characters.
The flesh plot sounds a lot juicier, no pun intended, than it actually is. It's like nasty.
It's much more grim.
Yeah, it's not flesh like sex flesh.
So our merchant, Antonio, he needs to borrow some money.
Yeah, and it's
for
because
his friend
Bassanio. Yeah, because Bassanio is in love with a rich lady named Portia. Mm-hmm. So Bassanio wants to go and court Portia.
But he needs money.
Yeah, but he needs money to do this. And the whole Portia thing, we'll talk about that in a minute. Because that's a casket plot game thing. Yeah, so Bassanio needs to borrow money from Antonio to do this. So Antonio doesn't have money because all of his money right now is tied up in some ships.
But there's such a lovely bromance between the two of them.
Yeah, they're great friends, and Antonio, they would do anything for each other. Yeah. So Antonio is like, okay, I can't loan you the money, but I'll get a loan from Shylock. But Shylock is like, okay, I'll loan you this money. Mm-hmm. And Shylock tells us a lot about how Antonio has historically been pretty anti-Semitic toward Shylock. Yeah. They've behaved badly toward each other, just in general.
He talks about being spat on. And
they don't have a good relationship, but I think it's one of mutual derision and yet mutual need of some sort. So Shylock says that he'll loan the money to Antonio, and that if he doesn't repay him, then Shylock can take a pound of Antonio's flesh from closest to his heart.
And Antonio signs on the dotted line.
Yeah, Antonio is like, okay.
My ships are going to come in, no problem.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a discussion about this being like a jokey kind of thing, that then Shylock at the end is like, you told me you would, in this like crazy, crazy way. I don't know.
So do you think Antonio almost has his disbelief that Shylock would really go through it?
Well, it kind of seems like it, but like they're in court at the end of the play.
Yeah.
I don't know. It kind of goes back and forth, which is a little bit of this genre problem that we have, that we can't...
It's dark.
If you can't tell it's a joke, then maybe it's not a good joke.
no. And so, okay, so more on the comedy side of the hybrid.
Yeah.
We've got Portia,
Yeah.
who she's ready to get married, but her father said left this rather peculiar set of instructions.
Yeah. So he leaves. So he decides that whoever gets Portia's hand is going to be the one who chooses correctly of these 3 caskets.
A box.
3 boxes, basically. One box is...
But they're not funeral caskets.
No.
A lot of people
that would
think
be
that's
macabre. Oh, well, of course. Yeah. Gosh. That would be a whole other thing. But
a gold one, a silver one, and a lead one.
Yeah. Yeah, and so usually the rich suitors who come to see Portia in the course of the play are usually like, she is so fair that I will go for the gold one, or, she's so shiny, I'll go for this, etc.
And Bassanio chooses the right one.
He chooses the right one, which is the lead one, and that's the correct one. And Portia also doesn't know the correct one until they're opened. But she's excited because she's really into Bassanio also.
And it just so happens that her lady Nerissa is really into his best mate as well.
Yeah, Gratiano, who's gone with Bassanio for their bro trip.
Yeah.
So yeah, super convenient.
That happens really fast, and almost as soon as everyone's happy and married...
Then alas...
The ships don't come in.
The ships don't come in.
And we're going to court.
Them ships have wrecked. Actually, yes, those ships have wrecked. Or there's
and Bassanio's like, sorry, babe, hold off.
Yeah. Bassanio's
I have to go and look after my friend.
Yeah, actually, my friend is about to lose a pound.
It's the only reason I could really
in a bad
you
way
in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And so Portia, amazingly, is like, you know what? I will pay for all of this. Honey buns, it'll be okay. I'll pay for all of it. Just take care of it. And he's like, but the thing is,
you take all the time you need.
Yeah, take all the time you need. And Bassanio's grateful, but already there's like in the course of the play, there's talk of like, well, Shylock he doesn't just want the money. Clearly, he's not in this for the money. It doesn't matter how much money you offer him.
Yeah,
he wants the flesh.
He wants a pound of flesh.
He wants a pound of flesh.
So they go to court.
So he wants to kill Antonio, basically.
They go to court.
Yeah, they go back to Venice, they go to court, and then magically there is this young
doctor lawyer judge who shows up because the other guy has been unwell.
Yeah, and he shows up with an assistant.
Yeah.
And those are Portia and Nerissa in disguise.
And the audience, we know this.
Yeah, we totally know this because we've heard them talk about it. Because Portia and Nerissa are like, hey, let's go do this thing.
We're so clever.
We're so clever. We're going to dress in men's clothes and do this thing. So, yeah.
And this is where, or one of the many times, but particularly this part in the play is really not funny to me. Where they build up to the 11th hour of you think, Shylock is going to get his pound of flesh.
Yeah.
And whenever I've seen it staged, it's really quite brutal. And
it's like the knife is ready.
Yeah,
it's like
got the scales and...
Yeah, it's like all set up and stuff. And then Portia outsmarts everybody, basically.
And bitch has known all along.
Oh, she's totally known. Yeah, she's totally known. And she, so what she points out is that in the original agreement, Shylock can take a pound of flesh, but it says nothing about blood. And so
one drop of blood.
Yeah. So she's like, if you shed one drop of Christian blood, then...
You forfeited the bond.
You forfeited the bond, it's over. And so Shylock is like, okay, just give me the money. And then Portia is like, no, actually... You said in court that you don't want the money. Another thing. Yeah, so the vengeance thing, it's like this pendulum that swings super far in each direction, right? Like, just continuously, where Shylock backs away from it, and then, Portia kind of, like, goes in with the total support of, like, everybody else, right? And says, no, actually, because you have now, like, conspired against... a citizen of Venice, like now you have to forfeit your riches, basically.
And there's a subplot we haven't touched on, which is Shylock has a daughter called Jessica.
Yeah.
And she's run away with a Christian guy, Lorenzo, and they're hiding out at Portia's house. You know?
Yeah, so they're hiding out at Portia's, and so basically it's everybody against Shylock at this point. So Shylock has to give his money to Lorenzo and Jessica upon his death.
Yeah.
So he basically has to sign that over.
Yeah.
So Jessica will be set up, even though she eloped with Lorenzo. So Shylock...
And stole some money.
Which famously he has the scene, or where someone reports on him running through the streets saying, "My daughter, my ducats, my daughter, my ducats." So obviously Shylock he's upset about her running off, but he's also really upset about his money.
Yeah.
So the depiction of Shylock as a father is, like, reprehensible.
Yes.
And as a person
it's not sympathetic on any front.
No. Except he has this speech where he talks about "hath not a Jew eyes." And that's all we're going to tell you about the speech, because you should read the play.
You have to read it.
But it's a beautiful speech in which he talks about how Jews are people too, basically. And likewise, Portia has a beautiful speech in the court scene, the quality of mercy. Yeah, which is lovely too, where she's trying to convince Shylock to show some mercy, which he doesn't. And then they don't show him mercy.
No
mercy.
So
then everybody's just all kinds of not showing mercy.
So the court finishes, he's a broken man. Mm-hmm. Everyone else is happy. And then there's this one other conceit before, the real identities are revealed, where both Portia and Nerissa insist that Bassanio
and Graziano
gift them their rings that were given to them by their wives.
In
so
payment.
We give you anything else you want. They're like, no, we only want the rings. And they give in and say, you can have the rings. Mm-hmm. And then they go back to Belmont, which is where Portia lives. Estate. And she gets there first with Nerissa. And there's this comic antagonism about, where are these rings?
Yeah, like, we gave you those rings in good faith, and the guys are like, but we gave them to the doctor who saved everything, and the doctor, lawyer, judge who saved everything. And it's like a funny, cute thing, and then the women reveal that it was them. So it's like a lovely, jokey thing, and the play ends with a vagina joke. Or which, what else would it do, right? Yeah. I mean, after we talked about, like, hacking out part of somebody's body and the Jew dog getting his, day. Shylock is also forced to convert to Christianity.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, is that... And so that's part of the comedy, don't you know? That's so funny.
Before we finish Alison Borsley...
Sorry, I have opinions.
Is there anything... I know you want to say heaps about this play, but is there anything else you want to say about it? I think we've, really covered how it is problematic.
I think it's, one thing I like about the play, I like the depiction of Portia and Nerissa as, like, human people who are friends, right? So it's like this kind of sisterhood thing. The bromance is enjoyable as well. It just makes me so angry because I can't, there's kind of no good way to produce it. Like, no matter how, various actors have tried to make Shylock super, very human. Oh, he's so human. Oh, look, he's, like, well-kempt and not dirty, and he's wearing, a yarmulke and stuff. But that doesn't change what comes out of his mouth, and that doesn't change, like, what his motive is in the play.
Yeah, in the text, there's no real balance for his vitriol and sense of vengeance.
Yeah.
As it comes across.
Yeah, and it's so dark that it offsets any of the seeming comedy that would be in the play. And, like, I think it kind of is, it is a commedia play, I think. Like, a lot of the characters are based off of commedia dell'arte type characters. That's Italian. There's a lot of that, so it's like a tragedy wearing a comedy's clothes or something. Like, except for the Shylock part. That's my dramaturgical analysis. Emily, what do you think?
I think out of our three problematic plays, It's the one I would be most stretched to find solutions for staging in the here and now.
Yeah.
I can, even though I find them all problematic to a degree,
Yeah.
I can still conceive of ways that they could be staged.
Yeah.
This play...
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. Schools in particular do it because of the roles for Portia and Nerissa.
Yes, yeah.
Right? Like, and same for Antonio and Bassanio. Mm-hmm. And Portia's scene particularly in the court, right? It's a great part for a woman. But she's also got some real problematic other lines in regard to the other suitors.
Yes, there's more in this play.
Yeah, there's more in this play who is a suitor, and she don't talk too nice about him. It's tough. So
we're going to conclude with definitely know about the play, read it.
Mm-hmm. And
see it for what it is.
Yeah. Have a read. See what you think.